What if I told you Skyrim actually exists in the Oblivion Remaster? And what if I told you I actually managed to go there? And honestly, you won't believe what I found. But let's start from the beginning. Here's how I escaped Cyrodiil and broke into Skyrim in Oblivion Remastered. So you may or may not know that Cyrodiil, the world in which the Oblivion Remaster takes place, is a province of Tamriel. Skyrim is also a province in Tamriel. I like to think of Tamriel as a continent like Africa. It's one big landmass with lots of different countries, if you will. But in the world of the Elder Scrolls, they call them provinces. As you can see, Skyrim borders Cyrodiil to the north. So much so that the city of Bruma is full of Nords that can't stop yapping about Skyrim. Now, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim actually takes place over 200 years after the story of Oblivion, but we can infer from in-game books and talking to NPCs that Cyrodiil is very much still an active province. The Imperial Legion are from Cyrodiil, and Cicero from the Dark Brotherhood mentions that he came from the very same Cheydinhal sanctuary we see in Oblivion. We also know that in Skyrim, if you stand on the throat of the world, the highest point on the map, if you're lucky to get a clear enough day, you can faintly make out the white gold tower in the Imperial City. You know, this city from Oblivion. And if you're on PC, you can use console commands to bypass the invisible borders and even go to the Imperial City itself. Except it's really low res with no actual NPCs because Bethesda only intended the city to be seen from a distance. But in the Oblivion Remaster, it's a very different story. So I started my journey to Skyrim from the Imperial City sewer entrance at the start of the game. Here I looked up to the snow-covered mountains known as the Gerals. The Geral Mountains stretch across the entire north section of Cyrodiil and connect to the border of Skyrim. And further west, the Velothi Valus Mountains of Morrowind, which is where the Elder Scrolls 3 takes place. And I very much hope we'll get a remaster of that game next, but I digress. I needed to head up towards these mountains. It's almost as if Todd Howard didn't want me to go so far north, because these mountains were full of angry wolves and creatures. Like, honestly, I've never seen so many wolves all in one concentrated area. It's kind of like Todd saying, I see you, I see what you're doing. So if you're going to take this journey yourself, be prepared to get attacked a lot. You'll have noticed Frostcrag Spire in the mountains too. Now, the contents of this old tower will provide us with some secret Skyrim related info to help us along our journey. By picking the lock to this tower and reading the journal left by the tower's previous occupants, we can piece a few Skyrim related things together. The long game ended mage explains why they built this tower, yada yada yada, but the specific line we want to focus on is this. I've also reseeded my alchemy conservatory. I'm trying to do a wizard's voice. Let's try that again. Oh, I've also reseeded my alchemy conservatory with the best ingredients Cyrodiil has to offer, and some from beyond her borders. This infers that the Wizard of Frostcrag Spire often travelled to Skyrim, and did so with ease being so close to the border. Another quick note is that in the city of Bruma, a lot of its inhabitants call Bruma half Skyrim and half Cyrodiil, inferring that many Nords do indeed view Bruma as being in the province of Skyrim. So I suppose from a certain point of view we're already in Skyrim. But anyway, I wanted to officially cross into Skyrim. So I needed to route a path over the mountains safely, and to do so I had to head up to the spire of the Wizard's Tower. Now, looking off into the distance, you may notice something quite familiar. That big mountain is actually the throat of the world over in Skyrim. If you played Skyrim, you might remember this mountain being the one with the 7,000 steps, the Greybeards, and the Dragon Parthenax. So now I could actually see Skyrim visibly, and the route up the mountain looked pretty doable. I jumped off the tower and started walking over to Skyrim. As I proceeded to walk towards Skyrim, I inched closer and closer to the point that I was practically already in the province, but then I ran into a slight issue I had to overcome. I ran into an invisible wall that stops me from going any further. I immediately tried to glitch my way through the invisible wall, but after sprinting and jumping for a while, I realized this wasn't going to happen. Not like this, anyway. I needed to do a little more research. So I took to the internet to research a surefire way to bypass the invisible wall, and I was met with a lot of results for the original Oblivion. I figured if it worked in the OG, then the remaster would probably be no different. Now, some of you PC gamers might be wondering why I don't just use console commands to no-clip through the wall, which basically just turns off all collision with objects, including the invisible wall. Well, I'm playing on Xbox, which does not allow for console commands. But also that would be far too easy, and I wanted a proper challenge. So I needed to go for a more hands-on approach. My good friend ChatGPT linked me a 4-year-old video by the channel PRC Live.
Save clipping is a glitch in Oblivion that has been used in the speedrun community for years, which allows players to run through walls and get out of bounds with relative ease. Start by quick saving while your character is running straight into a wall. Quit to the main menu, load your quick save file, and start holding the button to run forward during the loading screen. When the game loads in, your character can run through the wall if you were positioned correctly.
So I jumped back into the game and tried this classic glitch out. Surely it works in the remaster, right? Well, kinda. I say kinda because, well, something happened, but it wasn't what I was expecting. Let me explain. So I did as the video instructed. I saved, exited to the main menu, and then reloaded whilst pushing up on the thumbstick. But instead of clipping me through the invisible wall, well, it launched me into the Tiber Septim Hotel in the middle of the Imperial City. And something that's even stranger is that this location is actually where my active quest was. I had the Dark Brotherhood quest active called The Lonely Wanderer, and this is a quest that doesn't lead you straight to your objective. You have to gather information across the Imperial City, which will lead you to the Tiber Septim Hotel. So this glitch didn't even technically send me to a map marker or anything. It somehow knew where I had to go and helped me bypass all the intel gathering work I would have done. Now I checked my armor and stats to make sure this is indeed what happened, and I didn't accidentally load an old save or anything, and as you can see by the save game thumbnail, it's legit. So I guess I found another use for this glitch, but regardless, I needed to find another way into Skyrim. So then I tried an old glitch I know for clipping through walls in the game Skyrim. You carry a book in front of your character and proceed to sprint forwards. If you're lucky, this will cause the player to glitch through any wall. But here in Oblivion, as you can see, it fails to let me through the invisible barrier. And I looked like an idiot, so I stopped. So I reached an impasse. To give up? Or to keep pushing on, knowing Skyrim was just beyond my reach. And this is where I took to the internet once more in search of answers. A Reddit user by the name of NoblinXD made a post showing off their character having glitched over to the province of Valenwood, Elsewhere, and Hammerfell. They stated that this was without the use of console commands or mods, so I was in luck. I now knew that it was indeed possible to at least leave Cyrodiil. But the problem is, NoblinXD didn't explain how they got past the invisible walls surrounding the map until a while later when enough people asked them how they did it. NoblinXD said, I realise now that I read my post again, I might have given the impression that I passed through the northern world border, but in reality I passed the southern Valenwood Gap and walked around Anvil, up towards Hammerfell. Okay, so if I was reading that right, I needed to actually cross through the barrier at the complete opposite side of the map if I was to get out of Cyrodiil. So I headed downwards and started galloping, running and jumping around the southern invisible wall. To start with, this was to no avail, but I did manage to glitch myself into a rock. But that rock is not Skyrim, so we're not done yet. I kept a watchful eye on NoblinXD's Reddit page for a time, in the hopes that they would update us with an actual tutorial of glitching out of the map. And lo and behold, bro drops the video we were all waiting for. So I tried again, and you'll never believe it, I was finally able to get past the invisible wall. The next obstacle to overcome was figuring out how the hell I was going to get from Valenwood all the way back up to Skyrim. You know, in lore terms, this would be a multiple year journey on foot. So I had no idea how long it was going to take actually in the game. So from here, I had two options. I could walk over to Elsewhere, cross from there to Blackmarsh, then up to Morrowind, and finally enter through the eastern border of Skyrim. Or I could follow the river towards the ocean, and then swim directly north until I reach Hammerfell. Then it's a light jog across the desert before I cross into Skyrim's western border. Both game plans were pretty solid, and they were my only choices. So I flipped to Septim. Heads for the eastern route, tails for the west. I hope you packed your swimsuit, cause it looks like we're getting wet. I had to be very careful swimming past the city of Anvil, because there was a chance that I'd cross back over into Cyrodiil's border without realizing, and that would land me back at square one. So I kept as close to the side of the map as I could and swam for what felt like an eternity towards the province of Hammerfell. To call this part of the journey arduous would be an understatement. Once more, it felt like God Howard himself was trying to pen me back into Cyrodiil, because almost as if from the heavens, a huge storm started raging. Todd wasn't happy. Through the storm, I did manage to spot a glimpse at the Somerset Isles, home to the High Elves off to the west, which was cool, but I couldn't let that take me off course. After a lot of swimming, I finally touched down on the shores of Hammerfell and began sprinting through the hills in the direction of Skyrim. Now, something that shocked me in Hammerfell is that the whole province is snowy and icy like in Skyrim, which is completely wrong. In the Elder Scrolls lore, Hammerfell was described as a desert-like land, and I mean we can even see this for ourselves in the Elder Scrolls Online. So yeah, I guess because Hammerfell isn't very visible from Cyrodiil, Bethesda didn't bother to generate an accurate landmass for it. Oh well, Skyrim is all that matters. And speaking of Skyrim, I was nearly there. I eventually reached the border between Hammerfell and Skyrim. All this hard work of breaking Oblivion wasn't for nothing. Or so I hoped. Now what do you guys think happened here? Do you think I was able to safely and easily walk over into Skyrim? Or do you think, like before, I was met with some stupid way of not allowing me in? Well, I can safely say, I got into Skyrim! Yes! Finally. I finally walked over into the classic snow-capped mountains of everyone's favourite home away from home. Then, in what felt quite poetic, the sun started to rise over the land of Skyrim. We're back. The first thing I wanted to see in Skyrim up close was the Throat of the World. So that's the direction I headed. Something cool to see was the Wizard's Tower from the other side. And that does make me wonder why we don't see it off in the distance when playing Skyrim. But anyway, I eventually moved so far into Skyrim that I was quite literally off the map. I took my time taking in the jaw-dropping Skyrim scenery as I travelled towards the largest mountain in the province, but eventually I ran into another roadblock. The final roadblock, unfortunately. It seems that I'd reached the end of the physical landmass in the game. It would be a sheer drop into the abyss if I was to go any further, but the Throat of the World was still so far off I felt as if my quest wasn't over. So I saved my game one more time because what have I got to lose? And I took a leap of faith. I plummeted for a good 20 seconds or so as I watched the map above me disappear, but before all was lost, I was saved by a subterranean ocean. As my journey came full circle, I started paddling towards the Throat of the World. I was weirdly back on track, but that didn't last long. You see that rock I'm swimming towards? Yeah, as soon as I reached that rock, I was flung down even further. Now I was falling once more, but the game thought I was underwater. Without being able to alter my fate any longer, I watched Skyrim fade away alongside the breath in my lungs. So that's how I broke into Skyrim. I battled insane creatures, travelled across half of Tamriel, and finally met a grisly end in the land of the Nords. Well, under it. I think overall this experiment went pretty well. Sure, it took a long-winded turn, but it worked. And exploring Skyrim really felt like being back there. So you're probably wondering why all of these extra landscapes are even in Oblivion to start with. Like, why is almost all of Tamriel explorable when you're not meant to ever get there? Well, that's just so that when you're looking off to the distance in the actual map, it doesn't just drop off and show nothing. The rest of Tamriel is there in a rough low-res version to add to the immersion. We just pushed the map to its limits. So, what province should I explore next? I hear Black Marsh is boggy and, well, marshy, so that could be fun. And Morrowind is a classic that I'd love to explore in Oblivion Remastered. Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to press the like button and subscribe to become a player of the pad. See ya.